Margaret.
Hello, Thomas.
I realized I hadn't clicked a button. I needed to click a certain button. Welcome to our show here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here.
Great. This is Project Phoenix Rising, Unity Vancouver Island, and I'll begin by acknowledging the land that we are working and living and playing on here in Nanaimo. It's the ancestral territory and the unceded territory of the Nanaimo people, part of the Coast Salish people up and down the west coast of North America. We are grateful for their years upon years, thousands of years of being here, nurturing the land, and their willingness to share and teach us everything they have learned and their way of life here. And for that we say Haichka.
Haichka.
Yeah. And so joining me today is Margaret Tiveron. Margaret is a member of Unity Vancouver Island and has been with Unity since near the end of the last century.
Makes me feel old.
I know, but it's fun to say, right? It's just fun to say. So since around 1990, you joined Unity, and you are ordained as an interfaith minister. Also, you own and operate a fair trade business specializing in jewelry and fashion accessories, importing them from Nepal.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think some of the things, again, like Don, as I mentioned a few weeks ago when Don Giberson came on, he was prepared and sent me a lovely list, as did you. So one of the things we want to talk about today is, of course, fair trade. Why fair trade, why that matters, and your involvement in that. And I'm sure you can share a lot of knowledge with us and why we would even care about fair trade, right? There's that. And then also International Women's Day is coming up, March 8th. And today is, as we record
March
this,
6th.
is the 6th. So in a couple of days. So this may actually be out after International Women's Day, but that's fine. We'll post it and people can learn from that. So let's begin with, first of all, I think where I'd like to start, because I don't know much about it, is your interfaith ministry.
Ooh. Okay. I was ordained in the One Spirit Seminary, which is based in New York City, and I learned a little bit about a lot of the world's major faith traditions, and I have performed ceremonies, weddings, celebrations of life, and that kind of thing. I'm not doing that now, but yeah, that's.
What was so in that experience of the interfaith ministry, what was, and because you mentioned that you studied world faiths, what did you resonate towards the most, or what really gave you some aha moments of like, oh, I didn't know that, and that's pretty unique or amazing?
There was a lot of, oh, I didn't know that, because all of the faiths are so different and so interesting. But the one I sort of resonated with the most is Buddhism, and it says it's not a religion; it's a way of thinking and being and living. But I think that their teachings are quite in alignment with Unity's teachings, and it did resonate with me.
With Buddhism, then, and would you say then, because so if we look at Unity, started in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I've always assumed that Charles and Myrtle, especially Charles, was probably borrowing from Eastern philosophy or Eastern faith and traditions. Would you agree with that? Would you say that there's a fair bit that you see in Unity that kind of seems like it stems from Buddhist practices?
For sure.
So having said that, Unity is not just one sort of dogma. It's actually cleverly borrowed from other things. Now, did you study much on Hindu faith or tradition?
Yes, some. Yeah.
Because I think you've spoken about that here at Unity, have you not?
Yeah.
Yeah. A few years back. Yeah. Is there anything there that particularly struck you as unique or that aligned maybe with what we do here?
Hinduism is a very complicated faith tradition, and I don't pretend to understand it because it's just there's so much to it. There are countless gods that people will worship, and there are countless festivals. And when I've been in Nepal, I have found out that they have, so many things that they do, and to worship and to in gratitude. And I'm fascinated by it. And I've been to Nepal twice, and every time I sort of learn a little bit more about Hinduism and how it operates. And as an example, when I was in Nepal last April, they were having festivals for rain to the rain god, and each city within Nepal or within Kathmandu had a different festival. One, they built this structure that was probably 3 stories high. That so they took days and days to build this thing, and then it was on a chariot. They called it a chariot, and then they dragged it through the streets of the city. And I received a video from somebody where there are people on the roofs of the buildings that it's passing, because the roads are quite narrow, and the people are on the roofs with ropes pulling the top of this thing so that it doesn't topple over. And so it went for days down these narrow little streets, and people gathered and cheered and were quite excited about it. And that was to request rain from the rain god.
Right.
And so that was in, I think, Bhaktapur, and then in a different city, which was adjacent to it, they had a different festival.
Right.
So
I can't even imagine something like that happening here.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's awesome. Like, what a thing to witness, right? To be a part of an experience and to really open your mind to be like, oh, wow, I am in a different place.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the culture and experience here is far different than, where I grew up in Canada. Yeah.
I find people are much more demonstrative in their faith. When I was a kid in Catholic church, we would have Ash Wednesday, and the priest would put a little cross of ash on your forehead. And I hated that, because I hated walking around and sort of acknowledging that I was a Catholic and that I went to church today to have that happen and everything. But these people have smears of red on their forehead that indicates that they have performed puja or been spent time worshiping at an altar.
It's like a badge of honor.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Much more than something to be ashamed of or like hide. It's like, no, look what I have done. Yeah. Yeah. And
all along the streets, and I'm sure it's probably the same in India, there are these little shrines with a statue of a god, and people make offerings to it. So you'll see it surrounded by flowers or food, and these are all along the street. And again, it's just, religion is so much more alive there,
right?
Or more apparent for sure.
Yeah. What was your calling? What did that look like? Why did you want to do this crazy thing called ministry? Why did you want to go into that?
It just felt like a pull. It felt like that was part of my path. I can't say what it was. I did look at applying to Unity. I did apply to Unity for their ministerial program, and they redirected me, which, and at the time, I had to spend at least 51% of the time at Unity Village, and to uproot myself and to go down there didn't feel like the right thing.
Right.
So I went from there. I found out about One Spirit and Interfaith Seminary, and that felt like a better fit for me.
Yeah. Yeah, if I had to have, if this had required me to be at Unity Village, I know in the early days you would go there for 2 years and live on campus there. It wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
There was no way I was going to leave my family at this stage of my life to pursue that and be away from them for 2 years at a time. That just didn't make any sense. So the fact that it was online
Yeah.
And I was able to do most of it, almost all of it, because of COVID. It ended up being
Exactly.
all of it. I
Yeah.
ended up doing from the comfort of my own home.
Mm-hmm.
So how much suffering did I really do for ministry, right?
Oh, you did. I'm sure.
Maybe I missed something. Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that know you at Unity that actually don't know that about you. So hopefully they'll tune in here and know where you're coming from. You know, that you've done some serious work around your faith and your belief, and not that you need to be a minister to do that, but there is a certain level of commitment that is required.
Yeah.
That goes into that. Let's turn attention though to your fair trade business and how that. So two things. You know, I don't know much about fair trade. I certainly know that it sounds like I'm being fair in trading with people that you know maybe don't have all the advantages that we have.
Yeah.
You know, so it sounds like a great idea. I don't really know the mechanics of it or how it really benefits, you know, say a farmer in Nepal or a shop owner or somebody who creates something in, I will use the word third world country, so to speak. So I don't really know how that works. And then we want to tie that into International Women's Day as well. So maybe give us an understanding of what fair trade is and how we benefit people by using fair trade.
Fair trade is a way of doing business that puts respect and sustainability and cooperation at it's very important. And
so if I back up, so sustainability is like a main tenet of fair trade. We're trying to create something that is sustainable for those people that
Yes.
Would be easily taken advantage of.
Exactly.
In a capital, like in a power surge capital way, right? Where some big conglomerate would come in and just take advantage of them. So by using fair trade, we're actually offering them two things. One, some fairness, right, in how they do business and how they're treated, but also the sustainability of them not just being overrun by massive corporation.
Exactly. So they, a big part of it is that they receive a fair wage, a living wage, so that, you know, they can survive, and it's consistent. So sometimes there are commodity products like coffee and sugar where the price fluctuates, and in the fair market situation, it's the grower who suffers,
Right.
because the middlemen all get their share, and the growers may not. So this is a way of ensuring that they do get their fair share, and it's consistent, and they can count on it, and they know that they're going to have this money to, for example, send their kids to school or build a new room on their home or whatever it is.
Take care of their families. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And other parts of fair trade are that equality for women and absence of child labor. It's also very committed to the environment and finding ways to honor the environment with the production that they do. So it's very much about respecting, building relationships so that the artisans or suppliers know that from year to year they're going to get the same order.
Right. So I would imagine, like if I think about this, having the experience I have in the stock market and understanding supply and demand, just on that level, I could easily see how if there is a big buyer of coffee, let's say, that can kind of corner the market, they could actually drive prices down to the grower, which may be, some guy with a coffee field and he doesn't have a lot of power, or she doesn't have a lot of power.
Yeah.
And so they have to accept whatever price that organization or company might be offering. Then they can buy it up and hold back the market and drive up the price of coffee per se, where they now get a really great price as the middle person to sell it into the market. And meanwhile, the grower has no ability to capture some of that upside.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So really what this is designed to do then, I'm thinking, is to take away the ability for somebody to come in and kind of corner the market and drive prices down to the first hands, which are the growers, so that they can then hoard it all and then create a secondary market that they sell into where the prices are dramatically higher.
Yeah. Or an example that we're seeing right now in the news is the Body Shop was founded years and years ago by a woman who was very committed to fair trade, to working with suppliers, to, ethical business and green business. And she sold the business to someone who was more interested in the bottom line. And they have announced all kinds of store closures. And they're going to be buying, millions of pounds less of these raw materials that go into the products. And the farmers planted the stuff, planted it, harvested it with the expectation of it being sold. And now it's kind of like, sorry.
Right.
So that is the way the business can work, where I don't think that the decision would have been made like that if they had a more fair trade model, where they might have phased out the business slowly, closed the stores slowly, or whatever. But there would have been a real focus on how this is going to impact the producers.
Yeah, I haven't. I saw the headline that the Body Shop was closing stores. I didn't read as to why, and I didn't know it was sold. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so which begs the question: had it not been sold, had that person that was running it with the integrity and the mission that they were on, if that would have needed to have been done, and they sold, and so I'm going to have to read up on this now. I want to know what the inner workings of that are, because if it is just profit driven, right, then the idea would be, well, we're just going to cut and slash and burn, or maybe they don't have the sales to support the demand.
Yeah, I don't know about the sales, but there's definitely a cost cutting is a very high priority for the new owner.
Right.
So.
Right. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How does this tie into International Women's Day?
This ties to International Women's Day because most of the people who work, certainly in the handicrafts field, are women. And the difference that it makes for them is that they obviously have more income coming into their home. If they're a single parent or a widow, it's their only source of income. But if they have a partner, it supplements and enables them to do things in their home that they might not be able to do. One of the most important things that women will want to spend money on is education for their children. So, yeah, there's often that. I heard one story about a woman who loved to eat meat, and on her husband's salary, they could not afford meat. So she got this job, and she was earning money, and she spent it on, probably not all of it, but she spent it on meat and was able to enjoy that. So she, improved her quality of life. But she also got confidence in herself and carried herself in a more positive way. And her husband and her children regarded her in a different way. Her husband sort of saw her as having more value. And the children were like, oh, Mommy, don't do this. We'll do the housework because you've been working so hard. So it really got a different appreciation for her within the family.
Yeah, I remember years ago watching a movie, and I forget. I think it might have been. It's a bit of a comedy, but there was a movie done where Dave becomes president. So I think he's a lookalike to the president. The president got really sick. They didn't want to announce that the president was sick, so they got this guy named Dave to pretend he was the president, right? But his day job was actually finding employment for people. And I remember in that movie, his character actually said that one of the great joy, there's nothing more joyful in life for him than watching when somebody gets a job that has been looking and looking and looking, and how that changes that person, right? How they stand up straighter, they carry themselves better. There's just a vibrancy and a life to them when somebody actually gets a job that's been looking and is maybe been looking for a while and can't find anything. And there's that desperate side, right?
Sure.
So really what you're talking about is that something like fair trade supports people that they can have some value in there, not only provide for others, but within themselves, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Right, where they actually begin to feel good about who they are and what they do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in most cases, or in places that I've seen, the people are very close knit. They sit beside each other all day and work, and they become very close friends, and they become, a support for each other as well. So that's a really positive aspect as well.
Would you say that, and maybe you don't know this, but would you say that in the fair trade world, so to speak, there is a lot of women entrepreneurs that are being supported?
Women artisans.
Yeah.
I would say there could always be more, but there are pockets where there are women being supported.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about your business, because you import from Nepal jewelry and fashion accessories.
Yes. Scarves and bags mostly.
Right. Like these kind of fashion accessories?
Well,
maybe not those exactly, but this is as far as I go in fashion accessories.
Okay.
And so do you know exactly where your stuff come from? Who makes it?
Mm-hmm.
So you're tied in directly with, I know where this comes from, I know who's making this, I know how much money they're getting for it.
Yeah.
Are you buying direct from those, or is there a middle?
I am buying directly from workshops.
Yep.
Where the people work. So I'm buying basically from the people who make the product.
Right. And so when you've been to Nepal, that's what you've been doing, is sourcing out.
Yes.
Where you're going to do that,
yes.
Who's going to do that, and then that's who you set up your buying with.
Yes.
Okay. And what sort of stuff do you bring in?
Silver jewelry, Tibetan jewelry, beaded jewelry, scarves, and cotton bags, mostly cotton bags. Yeah.
And are a lot of these things handmade?
All of them.
All of them are handmade?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So with the bags, for example, they weave the fabric, and then they cut the fabric out to make the pieces that they're selling. So it's totally all under one roof. Yeah.
And for the jewelry, do you get to see that ahead of time, or do you just trust that they're going to send you stuff that you're going to like? How does that work?
I'm involved usually in the design. I'm working with a new work group that I met last April, and I've just gone through a process of sending Pinterest photographs and saying, could you do something like this? And then they sent it back, and I was like, no, could you try this? And sort of back and forth 4 or 5 times to come up with something that I think is marketable. Yeah.
Right. And how's that going?
Well, it's not here yet.
Oh.
But
so it's not going very well then yet.
Well, it's interesting that the things that I think are going to be fabulous don't sell sometimes, and the things that I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll get this. That's what people like. It's like you can't predict it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've shared this before. I've always been fascinated by Steve Jobs and Apple, because he very much created things people didn't know they needed. Right, which is like genius, like to actually come up with things that you wouldn't think you needed, and then all of a sudden, we have an entire planet of people that can't live without the mobile device.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's pretty crazy. How do we know if a product is fair trade?
You have to ask questions. You have to ask, or do some investigation, or recognize a symbol, a logo on the product. So there's a fair trade logo for agricultural products in Canada, and which you'll find mostly on coffee for sure, and sugar, and
I've
bananas.
Seen those. I've definitely seen that.
Yeah. So there's that for agricultural products. In handicrafts, there is Fair Trade Federation, which its logo is just changing. So, or there's World Fair Trade Organization. You look for those symbols on the product, or if you're searching online, Google search fair trade, fair trade jewelry.
Yeah.
But you also have to be aware of that this is a great marketing tool.
Mm-hmm. Scam.
So yes,
scam alert for sure.
Yes. So there may be a prominent coffee shop organization in Canada that says, I think, sustainably or equitably sourced or something like that. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
Because they say it's good marketing because people are interested in ensuring that the makers of their products are getting a good deal.
Yeah.
So.
You just reminded me of something. I was once but this one time I went to Pender Island, and we went to the grocery to buy some food, right? And we were going to have a barbecue, so we went to buy, chicken or whatever it was. Anyhow, in the chicken, they had, and this was great, it was right on the package, farm fresh chicken, which, I have no idea what that means, but this was farm fresh chicken, just so you know. Mm-hmm. Kind of like, not saying organic, but sort of playing into that field. Like if you read that, oh, this is farm fresh, come on. It's sort of like putting down sea fresh fish, right? Anyhow, I got a chuckle out of that. But you're absolutely right. There are ways in which the wording is manipulated to make it seem like it is part of the fair trade or sustainably sourced. What does that mean? That I was sustainable when I sourced it out?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or direct trade is one that appears a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the ways around that is, and here's a plug for you, but one of the ways around that is to align yourself with somebody like you where I want to buy some gifts, or I want some fashion accessories or jewelry, and I want it from, a particular style, to source out somebody like you that has done the work, the legwork of doing that fair trade business and trusting that you've done that. And that allows me some peace in knowing that my money is actually being used for a greater purpose.
Yes.
A greater good.
Yeah. And I as a member of the Fair Trade Federation, I am required every year to do a review, and they ask difficult questions. Like I'm actually now working with a question about cultural appropriation, right, and being aware of things like that, and the safety of the people, and how do you know that they're safe, or things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty rigorous, and it's ongoing. It's not you're in and that's it. It's every year I have to do a review.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, we just had a meeting that you were part of where the question of cultural appropriation came up, and I've thought about that since that meeting, and I don't think spiritual conversation is the same thing as cultural appropriation. I don't think Buddhism is a culture, right? It's a spiritual tradition, which isn't the same thing as saying, if I were to start, taking Haida practices, the Haida Gwaii practices or something, as if I knew something about them, and doing ceremonies that were their cultural. And
putting on the cape and everything else.
Then that's cultural
totally
appropriation.
Yeah.
Sharing the Four Noble Truths of Buddhist practice is not cultural appropriation, and so it gets tricky. But I really appreciate that you're actually being held accountable to that, because it's very easy to say, hey, I read up on this and now I'm going to use it, but it might not be yours to use yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's an important piece. And then getting back to the fair trade, what I love about it is back when I was doing a lot more speaking and content around financial planning, one of the things I always spoke about was put your money where your values are, right? Like, if you're somebody that wants to support organic growing or support fair trade, then you've got to do it. Like you have to put your money there first. And so if you're somebody that wants to raise your consciousness, so to speak, you want to be healthier, then you need to buy healthier foods. Like, you put your money where your values are, and begin to align everything about your life with those beliefs. And that's when, things can get pretty fun in the world of living, is when you're consciously aligned with everything that you're doing. And money is such a powerful tool. It has so much energy. So to know that you're doing something where, you're providing money to people that need the money, obviously, but also they're being supported and having that ability to create and share in the world. And as I love that story of the woman that, all of a sudden in her own family, she's seen differently.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, all kinds of things. Some of the fair trade workshops that I work with, they do more than offer employment. They will have, one of them had parenting classes so that the women are, learning about parenting. Or they'd have a dentist or an optometrist come in and check their eyes or their teeth. This one workshop had transportation to the place because most of the people worked in the area, but I guess not close enough to walk.
Right.
So they had a bus that would pick them up. One workshop where they were making jewelry and sort of bending over all the time, they had the opportunity to have help with their back if they have pain in their back. They would allow people to take out loans, and it was often, the loan was most likely to be for education for their children. There can be flexible about the hours so that if they have to leave early to be with their kids or come in late or whatever, that can be accommodated. So there's definitely value added for the people working there.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And I'm just thinking that I know we sell, Unity offers the ability to buy chocolate, organic, fair trade sourced chocolate around Christmas time or Easter time. We support that, I think, from Denman Island. Yeah. Right. And so that's what you're talking about, is something like that. And yeah, it might be a little pricier.
It might be.
It might be a little pricier, but the cost. So there's, as I say this, I'm just thinking about this. There's the cost in my pocketbook. I might spend $3 instead of $2, but that $2 is creating a cost that goes beyond just the money out of my pocket in what it's doing to our planet, what it's not doing to support people. Like there's a downward cost to that $2 versus paying that extra dollar and seeing that there's real value put back into the world. Like,
exactly.
If your money is energy and you want it to flow and move around with some kind of purpose, then it does start with us making those kind of decisions.
And when you buy a T-shirt for $3, the quality is not going to be there, and also it was probably made in a sweatshop. So there's that awareness as well.
Yeah.
But fair trade isn't always more expensive. If you go to the grocery store, for example, and look at the coffee, you will see some that has that is fair trade, and it's quite competitive with the other kinds of coffee. One brand that we see here in Nanaimo a lot is Kicking Horse, which is made in BC or processed in BC, and it's fair trade, and it's quite comparable to other brands.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind for me is Salt Spring. They're fair trade and organic and ethically grown. All of those things are taken into consideration. Yeah, this just puts me in that place of, for myself, it's like, how aware am I? How conscious am I of everything I do on a spiritual, emotional level that is serving or detracting? Because that's really what this looks like to me.
Sure,
is that fair?
for sure.
Am I serving others, or am I actually detracting from the world? And it's not about. And it's actually, for me, it's not even about. Am I supporting, conglomerate corporations? Because I am sure there are some corporations out there that do very good work in the world, that do take care of people that are an extension of a belief system that is one filled with values, and then there's many that don't.
Are you familiar with B Corps?
Yes, I am very familiar with
So
B Corp.
if you find a B Corp, which is kind of in all sectors of business, they are businesses that are ethical and have to live up to some standards as well.
It's very stringent. Actually, we back when I had a business partner, we actually looked into establishing ourselves as a B corporation, and the paperwork required the level of stuff that you need to do was beyond our scope at that time. Mm-hmm. But you'll see it. It's a circle B. It's just like if you see a copyright logo or a publishing logo with the circle P or the circle C. The B is the same thing, and that is a certified B corporation, which has met that stringent test of all things within the business. This is how you spend your money, where you source your supply, how you treat your people, how you treat the environment in which your business operates. Everything is taken into consideration for a B Corp. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are lots of organizations, but you have to do your homework. You have to understand that there is fair washing out there where people are saying, yes, we're ethical, and maybe you're not.
Yeah, I think I've seen, who's the guy that does those documentaries that are, I can't think of his name. He's from Michigan.
Oh, Michael.
Yeah,
Michael Moore.
Michael Moore. He did one on greenwashing.
Oh, yeah.
Which I've watched, which is exactly the same thing. It's pretending that you're a green environmental company and you're doing, supposedly doing the things that are green initiative, but really, when you pull back the curtain, it's really not.
It's interesting. Dawn and I, when we lived in Ontario, were looking at doing a renovation in our home, and we wanted to buy some carpet, and we wanted to buy green carpet, and we would ask the people in the stores if this is green. Is this recyclable? Is this recycled? And they didn't know what we were talking about. Mm. And we had to do the research, and we had to educate them, because they were, and then, they'd say, well, you can recycle it when you're finished with it. And it's like, no, we're not going to have it. We're not going to be the ones who make that decision. We want it to be sustainable when we purchase it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the work it takes. Mm-hmm. It's and it's fascinating to me that no matter what it is, whatever it is we want to do, where it serves at a greater purpose, there's work involved.
Yeah.
It's actually, and by work I mean we might have to dig in a little bit and do some research or ask some questions or source out other people that know something about this mm-hmm. in order to do this. And it's so there's nothing really that comes without that knowing or that looking into it at a level where you can have confidence that you've done what you need to do in order to live at a higher vibration, so to speak.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
And that is something, may I go on?
Yes, you can.
That is something that I love about Nepal, is they greet each other with namaste and the hands all the time. So you get into a taxi and namaste. And it just, I find it so delightful that they do that. And that's another part of the faith, bringing the faith into everything they do.
Right. It's not, and they're not embarrassed by it.
Oh, no.
It's just a practice. It's just the way it is. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.